Hey there, it's Bevan here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to movies I should have seen by now. Not so recently, I watched Pulp Fiction for the very first time. It was probably a couple weeks ago. I'm just going to talk about it now because I really have nothing else to cover in today's video. Pulp Fiction was recommended and lent to me by a coworker who said I should watch it. I had told him about this project of mine of movies I should have seen by now, and now he's just like throwing movies at me to like watch and review. Pulp Fiction was one of the first ones he gave to me along with Scarface, and Pulp Fiction I enjoyed a lot more, so I thought this would be a good one to review. And the reason I'm able to review it like weeks after I watched it is because it stuck out in my mind so much and just really made such a great impression that I can comfortably talk about things that I've watched on it 3 to 4 weeks ago. I was really iffy about this movie when I put it on because I'm really hit or miss when it comes to Tarantino movies. Kill Bill I didn't like the first time, but when I watched it again a few years later, I liked it a lot. I really liked Inglourious Basterds when I watched it in theaters, but I knew I wouldn't want to rewatch because it's such a long movie and just the style of that film is hard for me to sit through. But Pulp Fiction was just another beast. I mean, right off the bat, you got a huge, really well-known cast, which may or may not have been as well-known back in '93 when this movie came out, I'm not sure. We had Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta, Bruce Willis, Uma Thurman, and I'm sure there's other people that I'm forgetting. But, you know, those main people were, you know, the heart and soul of this movie, especially John Travolta, in my opinion. Movie starts off with this really crazy, intense, dramatic robbery of a diner or a cafe. The two robbers were sitting there, they're talking, they have a very long scene of just dialogue before they eventually like jump up on the table with the guns out and take the money. We don't actually see them take the money, they just kind of jump up on the tables with the guns, and then we don't really get a payoff of this scene for like 2 hours, which I thought was weird. So I had to watch this movie through a few different sittings just because of, you know, life getting in the way of sitting through a 2.5 hour movie. You know how it is. But the first half was pretty linear, other than this weird diner scene, and then you meet John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. You follow their little story, and then eventually it cuts to Bruce Willis, and you get a little bit of his story arc there too. Then it kind of like jumps around a whole bunch and flip-flops between different scenes, and it's really hard to follow if you're not really paying attention. And then at the end, you get the diner scene in its entirety where you have John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson and they're eating, and then the robbery tries to take place and they're able to like talk them down and out of it. And at the end of the movie, you're able to like piece together everything kind of. And it kind of begs the question of why Tarantino kind of structured his movie that way. I don't have an answer for you. I haven't looked into it at all. But it's a different way of filmmaking. And I'm going to be super honest, I am not in any way a Tarantino expert. I'm barely even a Tarantino fan. But I do know that he has a lot of interesting techniques when it comes to making his films, obviously. Some might say this movie had a really weird structure to it. I would say this movie had a lot of really weird scenes to it. For those familiar with the movie, you will know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention the pawn shop scene with Bruce Willis. This scene is so incredibly beyond reasonable doubt fucked up. So long story short, he ends up in this basement with his boss slash enemy that he's been trying to like rip off. And they're in the basement of this pawn shop, and the pawn shop owner calls this police officer, and you think they're gonna be like arrested, but really they just like kind of torture them, and Bruce Willis escapes somehow, and then they rape this guy, and Bruce Willis like breaks back in and prevents it, and there's a gimp that gets punched in the face for some reason. And again, it's just, why was this included? That's what I asked myself a lot after I watched a Tarantino movie. It's like, why? Why was it done this way? Why was this included? Why did this character do that? In a lot of other movies, I would just like accept the movie for what it is. But with Tarantino, he has this style of filmmaking that just makes you question a lot of things. Which is actually a nice change from other movies I've watched and movies I should have seen by now. Usually I just like accept them. You know, when I watch The Terminator and The Rock, I'm like, oh, these are really good action movies. And then on the flip side, if I watch a movie like Blade Runner or Alien that I don't really enjoy, I just chalk it up to, it was probably good for its time. But with Pulp Fiction, I critically thought about it, and I engaged in conversation with my coworker who lent me the movie, and every day I'd come in and I'm like, yeah, I watched this, and then we would talk about that scene and break it down. So it was really good, and it raised a lot of good like discussion points, which is kind of what the whole point of movies I should have seen by now is. And that is my quick review of Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and I would like to rewatch it all in one sitting so I can get a bit more out of it. But I would definitely recommend this movie to pretty much anybody. Now, I want you to comment below your favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. For me right now, mine is still Inglourious Basterds. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you really like this video, hit that subscribe button, because I'm putting out nerdy videos every single week. Visit sasspodcast.com, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BevinBoychuk. And until next time, folks, I am out like a light.